Hi, I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Coordinating Director for Humanities Team, and welcome to this keynote interview with Dr. Larry Dossey. If you've wanted to hear a global leader in healthcare's take on oneness, you don't want to miss this program. During this 30-minute program, Dr. Larry Dossey will distill some of the most critical thinking about oneness, what he calls the one mind. I'm going to introduce you to him now. Dr. Larry Dossey is an internal medicine physician, former Chief of Staff of Medical City Dallas Hospital, and former co-chairman of the panel on mind-body interventions, National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, and National Institutes of Health. He is executive editor of the peer-reviewed journal Explore, the Journal of Science and Healing. He is the author of 12 books on the role of consciousness and spirituality in health, which have been translated into languages around the world. His most recent book is One Mind, How Our Individual Mind is Part of a Greater Consciousness and Why It Matters. He lectures around the world. Welcome to Global Oneness Day, Larry. It's great to have you with us.
Steve, it's great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, let's go right into questions so we take advantage of our valuable time together. Can you tell me about your most recent book?
Well, the name of the book, as you kindly mentioned, is One Mind. It begins with my concern that we have really taken a wrong turn in the 20th century when we did our best to take the mind apart into various pieces, such as the conscious, the unconscious, subconscious, preconscious, and all of that. And I think we've gone too far. What we've done is to overlook the way in which minds come together. And I think that this has global consequences. I think that we have seen ourselves as isolated individuals who are separate from one another and separate from all sentient life on this earth, really. And I think we're paying a terrible price for that. What I've done in this book is to show how minds come together beyond individuality to form what I call the one mind, which is a way of talking about how consciousness in general is united and interconnected, and how individual minds also span space and time to come together in beautiful ways. I think the evidence for this is simply overwhelming, and it's time that we corrected this pathological turn in ways of looking at the mind that we have been obsessed with for the 20th century.
Yes, so agree with you. Larry, in your book, I know you talk about why this matters, why it's important that people understand this. Can you just take me through that?
Well, I think this emphasis in Western cultures on individuality and self-responsibility is beautiful as far as it goes. But I think any thinking person these days can see that it has also had a lot of terrible consequences. It largely has spawned an epidemic of greed and selfishness, and the tendency simply to dominate and use the earth in ways that are reckless and actually suicidal. I happen to think that if we had a deep inner sense of our connectedness, not with just other humans, but with all of sentient life, that it would have tremendous ethical and moral consequences about how we behave. I go back to a comment by Alice Walker, the great novelist, who said that anything we love can be saved. And I think that applies to the earth. And I think the question then becomes, how much do we love this earth? How much do we care about one another? How much do we care about sentient life? And to the degree that we can sense our oneness and unity with one another, that's going to have enormous repercussions about how we order our life as citizens on this particular planet.
Yes, that's so true. Larry, another thing I know you address in your book is how we know the one mind exists. Can you talk about that?
Well, there are many avenues to pursue here. I'll just mention one of the most dramatic. The fact is that about 15 to 20 million Americans have had near-death experiences that we know about. This doesn't count people who aren't talking about them. But this is a very common experience these days. And the overall sense that people return from this experience with is one of absolute unity and oneness with everything there is. This is so profound a realization that there's no going back for these people. Their lives are entirely transformed ethically and morally and behaviorally after they have this experience. And that's just one way of coming into this awareness. Also, people have epiphanies where they just simply get it. All of a sudden, this becomes very real, and to people who are fortunate enough to have this sort of experience. But I think the main reason that we ought to focus on this sort of evidence of oneness and connectedness and unity are actually experiments that have been done in laboratories all over the world by now, showing that minds simply aren't separate. We can communicate thoughts and emotions and feelings with people who are over on the other side of the earth. We are not locked into our brains and bodies and separate from other people. What we're looking at, I think, is an enormous body of evidence that comes to us from many, many directions, pointing not to absolute separateness and individuality, but to oneness and connectedness and unity. There are just many avenues of this evidence, which I go into in the book, which people can evaluate for themselves.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Larry, where did you come up with this idea of a one mind?
Well, I think I kind of had an inside track on this. I'm an identical twin, and identical twins who are emotionally close often share sometimes very dramatic thoughts and feelings and even physical symptoms at a distance. My twin brother and I have had this experience all of our life. This created a kind of a natural interest in this entire question. But then in my practice of internal medicine, I had repeated examples of people who could know their diagnoses ahead of time before any symptoms developed, and who would share those experiences with me. And moreover, physicians begin to tell me their experiences where they could communicate thoughts and emotions with their patients at a distance, as if actually a one-mind scenario was going on. So a lot of personal experiences lie behind this interest, but also beginning in about the 1980s, there was just a flurry of experimentation going on in labs around the world, which showed that people could communicate across great distances and even outside the present, as if they actually were united as one mind.
Wow, that's fascinating. I suspect that there are a lot of heads that are waving with you right now and with me as I listen to you, Larry. You share that there are both ancient and current depictions of this one mind. How did you decide to write your book about this now?
Well, I had the assurance that this wasn't new. This wasn't something that I was just inventing or somebody else was inventing currently. You can trace this idea of a unified mind back to Greek philosophy. Plato said that in the beginning we were one, and the communication between us as one was love. You can even trace this back farther to what are called the Akashic records, which go back at least 3,000 years in the philosophy of ancient India. The basic ideas of Satori and Zen and Samadhi and yoga and what has been called Christ consciousness in Christianity all point to a connectedness and unity between individual minds. So there's nothing really modern about this, but we have something that they didn't have, and I just simply call that evidence, hardcore experimental evidence that when you put this to the test, that's the picture of consciousness we're obliged to come up with.
Fascinating evidence. Let's turn to that. What kind of evidence supports this idea of the one mind?
Well, there are studies now which show that people can exchange extremely complex information at great distances, even at global distances, in a field called remote viewing, which has been around now for about 30 years. These studies have been replicated time and again. I think there's general agreement about between people who approach this with an open mind that the only way you can explain the outcome of these experiments is to say that minds are connected. There are many studies in healing now where people can extend compassionate, loving thoughts and affect the behavior of biological systems at a distance, not just what's going on in people at a distance, but in things like bacteria or fungi or even biochemical reactions in test tubes at a distance. So there are, I would say, hundreds of experiments in at least 6 different areas which confirm this idea that minds just simply aren't isolated. They're connected, they're united, and they appear to operate as one.
By the way, as I'm listening to you, Larry, I'm taking notes. You've really thought this out, and I can't wait to get to your book. Some people are new to Global Oneness Day, and so some people might call this idea radical, that there's one mind. What would you say to those people?
Well, I used to think it was radical. I gave great consideration to this whole idea before I jumped in and put my name behind it, and so this isn't just a jumped-up idea for me. I now think the idea that minds are separate and locked in and isolated from one another is the radical idea. I base this on 20 years of scrutiny of research findings, which I think nail this down really solidly as just the way things are where the mind is concerned. So I would just say to people who think this is radical that it's the other way around. I think the radical idea is that we're separate and isolated and cut off from one another. And so this idea of the one mind no longer seems radical at all to me.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more, but thank you for framing that. And it's interesting, isn't it? The more we spend time in this subject matter, the more it seems radical to look at this illusion of separation. Let me get to a question I've been dying to ask you. You say that one mind is crucial in confronting the great challenges we as humans face. Can you talk about that, Larry?
Yes. Well, I think basically the idea comes down to how we see ourselves as citizens on this planet. I think there are moral consequences to this that we just haven't really taken to heart. You know, every religion in one form or another has something called the Golden Rule. In Christianity, we say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If we really had this idea that we were connected with one another, we could upgrade the Golden Rule to something like this. Be kind to others because in some sense they are you. So I think the existential premises that we adopt according to which we guide our lives fall on one side of a line or the other. We see ourselves as isolated individuals who really aren't united in any fundamental way with either the environment, with each other, or with other sentient life. On the other side of that line is the one mind perspective, in which we sense our oneness and connectedness with each other, leading to a sense of love and caring and compassion for those creatures and all sentient life in a way that is so deep that it makes a difference about how we order our life, whether it's changing out our light bulbs or what we eat or how we behave toward the environment and so on. I just simply think that this is the great watershed about how we live our life and consequently about our future on this planet. I think our fate as a species is largely in balance, and it is these kinds of questions that you and I are discussing here that will eventually make the difference in whether we survive or not. I must say that I'm an optimist about this. I think that we are cycling out of this pathological wrong turn that we took in the 20th century about isolation and separateness, and they're sort of approaching, maybe kicking and screaming perhaps, but approaching nonetheless this new idea, which is actually ancient, that everything is connected. And so, Steve, I just think that this is not some philosophical idea, but one that has the most tremendous practical importance for our species on this gorgeous planet.
Isn't that the truth? Our founder, Larry, Neil Donald Walsh, you referred here just a minute ago to the pathology, and he calls this the separation pathology here on the earth that we need to heal. And then Ken Wilber calls this the flatland, where all of our focus is on the external world and our internal world has been lost in this. So we certainly couldn't agree more. And your idea that we create a new golden rule, where the golden rule is, do unto others as ourself because they are ourself, I think is just spot on. Larry, let's turn to just the whole aspect of accessing the one mind. Can you talk about that?
Yes, well, I think that this is an idea that we don't have to create or manufacture. I think it's built into us. I call it I think it's factory installed. It's part of our original equipment, which is, I think, a terrific point of view because it means that we only have to wake up to it. We don't have to invent it. And so what we need to do is to learn how to set the stage where this awareness and this realization can surface. And there are, scores of ways to do this. I suppose the most universal way is adopting some sort of contemplative or meditative discipline where we sit down, turn off our rational minds, and let our unconscious inner awareness bubble up into our conscious awareness. I think one of the main mistakes in opening up to the one mind is just trying too hard. I mean, this is who we are. I mean, this is our basic inner awareness. I think that there are some helpful guidelines that have been offered by some very smart people over the years, one of whom my favorites is Angeles Arian, who talked about her 4 rules of life. The first one is just show up. Rule number 2 is pay attention. The third one is be quiet. And then the last one is don't be attached to results. And I think that those sound simple, but they're actually quite challenging if you try to put them into practice. But I think that there are other ways that people stumble into the awareness of one mind. I think exposure to beauty is a great path, whether that is art or music, or in my own case, what's been so important is the exposure to the natural world. I can't imagine my life working very well without periodic exposure to wild places. My wife and I take August off every year and go just be in wilderness somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And so there are many ways to access the one mind, but I think the main point is that we don't have to make it up, and it's part of who we really are.
Yeah, it's our natural state, isn't it? So
yes, it is.
Don't have to work too hard when we really stand in that. Thank you for that. This concept of a one mind, why, Larry, is it not better understood in today's world?
Well, I think we've pretty much been culturally hypnotized to disbelieve in it. You know, in American culture, Western culture in general, we're supposed to pride ourselves in our individuality and pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and be responsible individuals. Everywhere, from birth onward, the emphasis is on separateness and individuality. I'm all for that as far as it goes, but there's a deeper knowing, a deeper realization that includes that but subsumes it and goes far beyond it, and that's what we're talking about. I think anyone who has any exposure to a scientific education in the 20th century has pretty much been hoodwinked, because we are given this idea that our consciousness and minds are confined to our brain. Consciousness is somehow produced by the brain, and when the body and brain die, consciousness dies with it. I think this is one of the most morbid and tragic and unproven ideas that we all grow up with. And so from many angles, we're taught to deny our oneness and unity, and we paid an incredibly horrible price for this, which is degradation of our environment and rape and pillage and greed and selfishness, as we've already mentioned. And so there are many reasons why we have not been able to honor this idea of our oneness and our community and coming together and so on. But I think we're on a roll now. I mean, I think this is a great time to be alive and working in this field, because never before has the human race possessed such incredible experimental evidence for our oneness and unity. So I think we should focus on our experiences, but also on our experiments. And when you put those two together, Steve, you've really got something.
Yes, you do. Experience and experiments. That's well said and true. Larry, some people that I talk to about, when I talk to them about oneness, get concerned about losing themselves in the one mind. What do you say to them?
Well, I hear that all the time, and I would say it's an unnecessary worry. I would just ask people to look at the record. People who have entered this state of the one mind, I'll just single out people who come back from near-death experiences. They aren't swallowed up or by just some homogenized goo in which they can't tell themselves from any other person. Actually, their sense of personality and identity is strengthened, but it doesn't dominate. And so I think this is a false worry when you just flat out ask people what's it like to enter into this idea of oneness and unity. We aren't swallowed up. We don't lose our self-identity. Matter of fact, those things are increased in the sense that we can go out and do a better job as individuals than we ever could before. And so I think it's a false worry. I think it sounds rational and reasonable that you would pay a price if you just focus only on oneness, but it just doesn't turn out that way.
Yes, well, all so beautifully said. And Larry, our 30 minutes is coming to a close. We've got about 6 more minutes, and there are a few things I'll share at the end here. Are there closing comments you might want to share with? We've got a large listener base here, people that are tuning in, listening to our speakers here on Global Oneness Day. And are there invitations, or is there an invitation you would extend to all of the people listening today?
Well, I think there's one thing that we have not mentioned, which I think is absolutely crucial to the tranquility and a sense of fulfillment in anyone's life. And I think this has to do with immortality, about what happens when we die. The idea of the one mind is that some aspect of who we are is infinite in space and time. You can't wall it off and separate it from all the other minds or consciousnesses. And so if some aspect of who we are is infinite in time, it's immortal, it's eternal. And I think the evidence for the one mind points like an arrow toward immortality of some aspect of who we are. You can call this the soul or something else. It doesn't matter. But I believe that the fear of death and annihilation with physical death has caused more suffering for humans than probably all the other physical diseases combined in the history of the human race. And I think this idea of the one mind, by making immortality not just respectable and possible, but absolutely mandatory, I think this is the great cure for that great disease of fear of death. I think this is one of the great benefits that comes from immersion in this idea of the one mind, that there's something about us that couldn't die even if it tried. So along with all of the other benefits in terms of saving our skins as a species on this planet and honoring all of sentient life, I think there comes this incredible sense of fulfillment and peace from knowing that we are immortal even now. Immortality isn't something that kicks in when you die. It's going on at this very moment. I think this is an incredible contribution of the one mind idea to the human race.
Yes, it is. Gosh, to take away this whole fear of death, this what you're calling immortal, is so comforting, and of course, the spiritual and sacred text refers to the one mind and talks about this one mind being the divine, that we're all expressions of the divine, and then that brings in the whole aspect of just being empowered by saying that all of what the divine is, we are too. All of those possibilities, all of that potential is ours. So it does create quite a U-turn in life, doesn't it, when we see this immortal and eternal, empowered aspect to the oneness. Well, yes, please, Larry.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that for all of us who are concerned about global oneness and the future of our species, I think we're going to win this, and I think that we are in the process of awakening. So let's be positive and optimistic, because I think we can see clearly now a way out of the darkness that has blinded so many of us during the 20th century.
Absolutely. Larry, is there a website people can go to follow your work?
Yes, it's LarryDossey.mp3.com.
Okay, LarryDossey.mp3.com, and I want to invite you all to check out Larry's website. Larry, I want to thank you so much for your wisdom and your insights, and I'll even call it heart energy, that you've shared here with us during this program. Just absolutely profound, and we're so grateful. Thank you so much. Next up, you bet. Next up, we're going to meet the Association for Global New Thought Leaders, who will share some of their key initiatives, including the Awaken World Film Festival that's beginning next week. So be sure to stay with us. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Before we go to the next panel, we're going to enjoy a oneness moment and experience 10 seconds of silence so we may connect with the divine within and each other. We're going to go ahead and begin our oneness moment now.